100 years after Leo XII did his condition of labor. And it says this: "But the earth does not yield its fruits without a particular human response to God's gifts. That is to say, without work. It is through work that man, using his intelligence and exercising his freedom, succeeds in dominating the earth and making it a fitting home. In this way, he makes part of the earth his own, precisely the part which he has acquired through work. This is the origin of individual property. Obviously, he also has the responsibility not to hinder others from having their own part of God's gift. Indeed, he must cooperate with others so that together all can dominate the earth." That quote was inspired by Henry George because this particular encyclical was in response to bringing up to date the Pope Leo XVIII, I think, or the 7th, can't remember which one, there are so many Leos, 100 years previously. Now, we believe that Henry George also inspired the South African Constitution. In there is the seeds of a complete reversal of fortune for the poor. I'll read to you section 25.5. "The state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to foster conditions which enable citizens to gain access to land on an equitable basis. The state must take reasonable steps." The state has not taken reasonable steps. We have just as many unemployed as are unemployed in Argentina, probably 25% of the entire population. And we also have 27 million hectares of unused arable land. So how can we dance this, the dysfunction? What can we do? What need we do to get everybody a hectare or two? Well, the state has also said, the Constitutional Court has also said that every statute in South Africa must be irrational. Irrational. They're all irrational. They all have to be rational. They have to be well thought out. They have to be viewed objectively and dispassionately to see that that is the right answer to this particular problem, or any particular problem. Secondly, they have to be equitable. There's no point bringing a law to Parliament which isn't entirely equitable. Now, what I'm going to show you this evening, and very quickly, I hope, is that the tax laws in South Africa are completely inequitable and irrational. And I'm going to do that right now, and I hope I'll manage within the 10 minutes I've been allotted. After traveling 20,000 kilometers, I might say, Mr. Sandler. Okay. Right. So the first thing is that, well, you tell me. I mean, you explain to me if you think these are rational or irrational. I'd also like to hear of any others that you might have in your income taxes. Okay, it is irrational. It is irrational that the state collects income taxes and VAT because, firstly, land prices become unaffordable when rents are renounced by the Treasury. Okay? Is that rational or irrational? You tax in such a way that the prices of land go up. And they've gone up 14 times since Nelson Mandela came into power in 1994. Yeah, okay, let me sit down, and it's probably easier. Sorry about that. It is inequitable that only the well-off can afford land, and irrational that the state sanctions this practice by favoring personal taxes over land rents. It is irrational not to charge people for leaving land vacant when there are millions who are landless, but who could make a decent living on the land working for themselves. No zoning scheme in the world says the use of this land is you cannot use it. You must not use it. People buy land in a given land or the given zoning for particular purposes, for housing, for factories, for businesses, for offices, not use them. It is likewise absurd to have a revenue collection system which promotes recessions, regularly destroying millions of jobs and mountains of wealth simply because bankers bet on land values, a proxy for house prices. It is crazy for the state to sanction the theft of private property, some would say extortion, when it taxes incomes, profits, savings and consumption. These are criminal acts. It's like being mugged on the roadside. They're taking you, at the end of each month when we get a salary package, somebody puts their hand in it. This is our private property. It doesn't have to be that way. The state, therefore, has no more business stealing from their own people than shooting them, like we've seen in the Arab Spring. It is also foolish to tax incomes and consumption because these raise the cost of property, capital, employment, and trade. The alternative land rents are a user charge and lower all of these costs. So you either have a system of high taxes and high house prices, or one of low taxes and low house prices. Now, which is the better? Well, we're going to ask 12 judges that, and we just need 7 of them to give us a reply that we want. Also, though, it is senseless that income taxes mean that those who work 12 hours a day pay more to the taxman than their 8-hour neighbors, when the land under their houses may share exactly the same benefits of nature, infrastructure, and services. Then it is certainly irrational to have a tax system where many South Africans simply advance money to the state, the taxes, and then sit back and wait for land prices to catch up. That has been my experience in my suburb in Cape Town. I bought a house there for 250,000 rand. I'm not sure what that is it's probably 25,000 US dollars. And 14 years later, it's now worth 2.5 million. Sorry, 250,000 US dollars. That's what's that? At least 10 times. And I've done nothing, I can assure you. I've tried to improve that property increase that value without adding any more improvements. But you can't do it. This is. I've been given this. It's a gift from the people of South Africa. Probably some of them are very poor. I didn't mind if we changed the system. I didn't mind staring that 250,000 US dollars down into the waste paper basket, because the opposite is that the few thousand landowners within 7 minutes walk of new fast train network in South Africa are expected to share land profits of 2.5 billion US dollars. That is the total cost of that project. It is likewise absurd for the state to buy or expropriate land, say for housing, because it then pays twice. Firstly, to create the land value through the myriad infrastructure, amenities, and services it provides, and secondly, in the repurchase. Then finally, if we don't get land occupation properly established, then many other rights, human rights, get diluted. Human dignity relies on self-sufficiency, You can't live a dignified life if you're not self-sufficient. That's a dictionary definition. And so if we don't make land affordable for everybody, then they'll never be dignified. Life itself needs sustenance and raiment and shelter. If you've got to borrow that, or you know, all you've got if you haven't got land is you can beg, borrow, or steal. Slavery and forced labor offer a better condition in life than being landless and jobless. At least a slave has a job. Might not be a very good one, a good job, but is a job. And he's maintained as any machine is maintained. He's given food, he's given raiment, he's given shoes. The freedom of occupation, well, let's just call it freedom, includes being able to walk away from an unwanted job. We have a lot of people coming to cities, and there are many more of them than there are jobs, and so the wages are pushed down and down and down. So you have to depend on soup kitchens and things. Well, if you had a piece of land upon which you could, by the way, if you have a hectare of arable land, we have worked out with our engineers and quantity surveyors that in 3 years' time, and just using the materials on that site, this is arable land, you can build yourself and develop yourself a vineyard, a small vineyard of your own, worth probably R1 million, $100,000. That's all it needs. It's only labor. You've got the land for nothing. It's just 3 years of labor. Of course, you'll do it with others. You'll cooperate with others in the area and do it together. Then finally, the most irrational part of this whole income and VAT system was that they appointed a tax commission when the new constitution came into being. And they packed it with lawyers and accountants, tax lawyers and tax accountants, who would all have lost their jobs if they'd have found that the single land tax was appropriate for South Africa under its new constitution. I didn't see how that could be irrational. Okay, well, I think that's I can stop there. I think I've covered the main points of what I wanted to say, and I thank you very much for having that opportunity.
Current tax system, the budget is balanced by income taxes and VAT. Failure to collect land rents, instead, amounts to a subsidy of land prices. South African urban plots have therefore risen to a remarkable average 485,000 rand. That is 14 times their 1994 prices, while CPI rose only 4 times. Farmland is now being purchased by the state at a remarkable 60,000 rand per hectare. Because land rents are 0.5% of prices and are essentially unearned, relying mostly on nature and infrastructure, land rents are the obvious default tax. Moreover, the earth does not get smaller. If instead of collecting income tax and VAT, the state were to capture land rents, then a vacant, unused hectare of arable land would cost 300 rand per month, not 60,000 rand. This conforms to section 25.5 of the Constitution, which says, the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures to foster conditions which enable citizens to gain access to land on an equitable basis. The current system, therefore, is unconstitutional, in that only the well-off can afford land and often do not use it. Land rents, however, make land affordable for all at a monthly fee and encourage land development. Furthermore, it is absurd that a tax system should prompt toxic mortgages, regularly destroying millions of jobs and mountains of wealth simply because bankers bet on land values. Land then has no capital cost and so is of no more speculative interest than bricks and mortar, fridges or cars. All these man-made things depreciate over time. Currently, when we tax incomes and consumption, that is VAT, we raise the cost of property, capital, employment and trade. The alternative land rents are a user charge, like site value rating, and lower all these costs. It is senseless that income taxes mean that those who work 12 hours a day pay more to the state than their 8-hour neighbours. With land rents, you pay a monthly rental for your houses and workplaces. Should your profits increase, land rents remain unaffected. In contrast to income taxes and VAT, land rents are determined by the benefits of nature, infrastructure, and services, not on productivity. The state has no more business stealing from their own people through income taxes and VAT than they do shooting them. Vacant arable or rundown lands currently amount to some 10% of the area of South Africa, but generate no revenue through income tax or VAT. Many South Africans simply advance money to the state as taxes and then sit back and wait for land prices to rise in recompense. Land rents ensure that owners develop in order to pay the rent. There is no capital appreciation. With farmland valued at 60,000 rand per hectare, income taxes, high labour costs and VAT have resulted in mechanization. This has reduced formal agricultural jobs to 600,000. It also produces 13 times more carbon than small farmers use to produce the same yields. Because land rents reduce land cost to a monthly rent, eliminating income tax and VAT, this lowers the cost of labour and capital. It creates an environment ripe for job creation. It can be argued that under a land rent regime, the entire 5 million unemployed could be producing organic food for all of South Africa on 1,200 square metre plots. Land rents allow South Africans access to enjoy dignity, freedom, housing, and lastly, a choice not to be employed by others.